everybody. Welcome back to the Film Buds Podcast. This is episode number 284, and my name is Henry. It is just me this time around. I know I said Elle would be back this week, but she will be back next week, so sorry to keep flip-flopping, but for our best of 2023 show, she will be back, which will be next week, promise. So very sorry if that's frustrating. Again, she will be back very soon. Things have just been a little chaotic, a little unpredictable, so just me, but hope that's okay. Thanks as always for joining us. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe. We've had some more jumps and listens recently, so we really do appreciate that. And if there's anyone new to the show, hit that subscribe button now, rate, review, all that good stuff, share with your friends. We really do appreciate it. And thanks to all those who have been listening for a long time. It's great. This week, I'm going to be tackling something maybe a little unexpected. I'm going to be doing the follow-up ending film to the series The Last Kingdom, which is The Last Kingdom, Seven Kings Must Die, which is now on Netflix exclusively. So again, it is a feature film, but it is picking up where the last episode of the series left off somewhat. And then I'm going to be doing a retro review of Robert Eggers The Northman from 2022. So should be a good time. Sorry if it's a little random, but I have only recently, over the last 6 months or so, been getting into The Last Kingdom, and I finished it up just a couple of weeks ago, the series, and I just watched Seven Kings Must Die in the last couple of days. So I am excited to talk about it. I think it should be a good discussion, even if you've never even seen the show. I think it should be a good talk, and then I am excited to talk about The Northman, because we did do The Witch and The Lighthouse, Robert Eggers' other movies on the show when they came out, so I did want to go and touch on this one as well. Then other stuff I watched, all the usual stuff. So thanks so much again for joining us. In terms of stuff going on here, not a whole lot. I feel like I'm boring every single week most of the time, especially if I'm by myself. But really just been keeping up with work. I guess the hardest thing these days is keeping a consistent sleep schedule. Work schedules are a little chaotic. Life is a little chaotic. So just trying to make sure to get good night's sleep. If you're not getting a good night's sleep, make sure you do that. That helps everything you do. Little pro tip. Other than that, not a whole lot. Dogs are good here. Watching a lot of stuff whenever I can. Sometimes it's hard to sit down and watch a whole movie in one sitting, but somehow I manage. Concerning the show itself, if you have not checked out our bonus show page, you can go to filmbuds.bandcamp.com, and that is in the show notes if you need that link. We have over, I think, 65 bonus shows covering franchises, directors, actors, anything you can imagine, with many, many more to come. So if you have not subscribed there yet, please do so. Donate, download, all that good stuff. It just goes to help support the show, and I think it's really great content, so please check that out. There's a lot of good content there for not too much money. So not a whole lot else to say, really. Another year for Film Buds. Will be coming up on our 8th year, I believe, in June, which is pretty insane. All right, well, enough said. Let's get to The Last Kingdom, Seven Kings Must Die, which is now on Netflix, and we do have a clip, so take a listen.
Edward, rightful king of these lands, has died. Do not assume Ethelstan will be king.
You know the prophecy, Uhtred? 7 kings die. All of Britain will unite.
Something is underway.
I do the bidding of the Lord.
War is coming. You only have to choose a side.
God wants you to fight.
All right. So as I said, The Last Kingdom, Seven Kings Must Die is a exclusive Netflix film, and The Last Kingdom series is also on Netflix, but you can also get it in other places. It's directed by Edward Bazalgette. Sorry if I said that last name wrong. Stars Alexander Dremen, Mark Rowley, Pekka Strang, Ingrid Garcia Janssen, Agnes Bourne, Elaine Cassidy, and a couple others. And the synopsis is, in the wake of King Edward's death, Uhtred of Bebbanburg and his comrades adventure across a fractured kingdom in the hopes of uniting England at last. So, as I said, I only started watching The Last Kingdom probably 6-7 months ago. I've been meaning to watch it for a long time, just never really got around to it. It's hard for me to commit to a show all the way through, as anyone who listens to the show frequently knows. At it's not that I don't like TV shows. It's just I don't really have the patience. I'd rather just watch. If I had 10 hours, I'd rather watch 5 2-hour movies than one season of a show most of the time. But I love history in general, but medieval history especially. I am really fascinated by every possible aspect of it. And so any movies, TV shows, books, I'm absolutely there for. Another one similar to this is Vikings, which I highly recommend. I think I like Vikings a little bit more than this series, but The Last Kingdom, the series, I think is incredibly underrated. It's very well acted, written, the production value, the ideas. It's just one that I never really hear get mentioned, maybe because it is a somewhat niche, medieval, dark, gritty character political drama, whatever you want to call it. But it's way more deserving of high praise than it gets because there's so much to enjoy there. It took me a little while to get into it. I heard really good things, and it's a little slow to start, I found, but by the end, or even by the first, second season, I was really, really loving it, and I could not believe more people hadn't watched this. And I was excited when this one came out. And in terms of the movie, it kind of sparked my interest in watching the series because I had forgotten all about it, hadn't watched any of it yet. And then I heard about this movie coming out, and then probably about a month or two later, started watching it. And it takes me a while, even though I was really enjoying it, it just takes me a while for shows. Finished it up just a couple of weeks ago, and then watched the movie in the last couple of days, as I said. Overall, I like the movie. I know it's been getting, I don't know if hate is the right word. I think disappointment is probably the best description that I've been hearing by a lot of people. I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece, and it's maybe not as satisfying or as epic as I would like the ending to be. Sometimes I feel like it could have just been a longer episode of the series, a final episode that's an extra 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But for what the movie is, you could probably watch this movie by itself and enjoy it and understand it, at least to a certain extent. There wasn't a whole lot of pieces that I had forgotten about from this series that I had to know watching this. If you're a medieval history fan, if you like medieval warfare or anything along those lines, you could probably watch this and at least enjoy it to a certain extent without having even seen the show. That's maybe an accomplishment on its own right. Obviously, I liked it a little bit more having actually seen the series and spent way more time with those characters. The movie, the biggest issue with the movie is I find that it's a little under 2 hours, and being the final ending piece to the series, it's a little rushed. It does feel like a movie in terms of the structure and the setups and the plot points and all that. But there were also times where it felt like a season of a show condensed into 2 hours. So there was something to do with, I guess it's a combination of the writing, the directing, editing, all those things where it feels rushed, where you could see this being a full season of the show. So that is a little frustrating, but for a movie, for a medieval warfare film, it does a good job. The ending, some people complain that it wraps everything up too neatly. I can understand that criticism, but I found with how the series ended and how it connected to the real history of this faction and of these characters, I like that. I thought the final battle was awesome. It's really gritty. It's gory, visceral, muddy, gross, but it's very intense. And again, anyone who likes medieval warfare is going to love that, whether you've seen the show or not. There's just a lot to enjoy there. I like the twists with how they get the one up on the enemy force with the horses and all that. I thought that was awesome. And I thought Uhtred, the central character's final moments in that twist there with what you think is happening to him and it's actually not. And then how the real history comes into play at the end and you're not sure what happened to him. I liked all of that. And one big thing, the Uhtred character and that performance is awesome. It is one of those more understated characters that is so better written and also acted than so many other leading characters, whether it's in period films or not. There's so many facets to that character. And even in this, I feel like you can tell, and maybe it's more so performance, but even in the writing, you can just tell that Uhtred is so tired of, he's trying to fix things. He's trying to reunite after all of this violence has been committed. Even though he's committed violence himself, he's done a lot of pretty heinous things throughout the show. You can just tell how tired he is of just trying to fix everything. A lot of his friends are now becoming enemies. people are turning on each other and that reunification seems to be dwindling. So that part of the movie I thought really worked. Yes, it could have been explored more. I would have loved an extra hour to this movie. If it had been 2.5, 2:45 as the ending piece to the story, I think that would have worked better than maybe an hour 45, because there are parts of the movie that just feel too brushed by to where you're not getting the emotional resonance. You're not getting the full connection between certain ideas and characters and relationships where you could see in the show, and you have seen in the show if you've watched it, those pieces explored much better and they fit together much better. The relationship Uhtred has with Athelstan is probably the best part of the movie, where he'd sworn this oath to protect this, young boy, young king, and then the king ends up turning on him, and then that conflict there. And then Uhtred's, and it's more so in the series, but also in this, where you see that extreme commitment to the oaths he takes. And then also in the show, he's dealing with certain leaders not trusting him because he's either denying taking certain oaths or vice versa. And so people are saying, no, we can't trust him. But in the end, he's simply just aligning himself fully 100% with someone, as opposed to, oh, I'll take this oath, that oath, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's really interesting. And then the overall arc in this film of his relationship with Athelstan, and more towards the beginning of the movie, where he's pleading with him to please try and maintain this peace. Please don't start killing people and all this because of distrust and because of his council feeding him information and trying to basically use Athelstan as just a guinea pig in order to maintain their own power, and that relationship he has with the other guy who he has a brief romance with, at least in the film. So all that's pretty interesting, both in the show and in the movie. The overall production value is great. The character designs, the haircuts are amazing, especially on Uhtred. Direction and cinematography, everything is pretty good value, high quality stuff. So that alone is something I appreciate, that you can always tell when it comes to historical medieval films and TV shows how much work is put into creating real sets, real villages, all the armor and weapons and stuff. And so if you like that kind of thing, you will definitely enjoy both the show and this film. Playing off the idea of the title, Seven Kings Must Die, I really like the kind of twist. I wouldn't say it's a spoiler, but the twist on that idea where there's the discussion on, all right, if you kill 7 kings, the sons are just going to take their place, and or someone else will. So there's no point in doing that in order to fill this oath or prophecy, whatever. But then I like how they turn on that and they say, no, we're not going to kill the kings. We're going to kill the heirs. So then if you cut out the sons or whoever that heir might be, then those kings are screwed, and they really are, their value is lost, because they're saying, all right, well, when I die or if I'm killed, that's the end of my bloodline. I'm not maintaining my royalty even if I'm gone, which is the big thing, obviously, with royalty. You want that generational timeline. But in this, they turn that on its head and they say, nope, we're going to kill the sons, not you. You have to live with it. And so I really like that, and how those certain relationships end or connect in that final battle. And again, that final battle is pretty awesome. The spikes that they throw on the ground, the cavalry ambush, and then just the really gritty, gross, claustrophobic nature of the direction and the choreography in that fighting is just, people are getting stumped, people are getting crushed because they get injured and they fall to the ground and they get crushed by the other people, both on their side and other people, and then just blood's flying everywhere. So if you like that kind of thing, it's definitely one worth checking out. Good performances. Again, I think Dremmond is amazing as Uhtred, and that writing for Uhtred in this and in the show is really top notch. I cannot say enough about it. It's hard to really fully describe that. Maybe I'll do a sub series on doing each season by season. If you'd be interested in hearing that review, let me know. So overall, it is not as epic or as satisfying as I feel like it could be. In some ways, I am glad that the movie still exists, just because it's nice to see a feature film of these characters where I don't, if I want to watch a little bit of The Last Kingdom, I can just watch this and still be fairly satisfied, but just not as great as I think it could be. And even just the title alone sounds pretty epic, and I don't think it fully gets there. Maybe partly due to the directing or the writing, there could be way more complexity and time and breathing space in the film where it just goes too quickly, and I'm a little frustrated by that. But overall, solid. I enjoyed it. I was never really bored. I thought the pacing, despite it being too quick, I thought it flew by in terms of being just under 2 hours. It didn't really feel very long. The ending itself, to summarize here, I understand that people may not like it to be tying all the loose ends together, but for what the story is and the historical significance, I think it works. I don't really need it to have some crazy, ambiguous nature to it, because the characters, in my opinion, still get a fairly good send-off, and especially Uhtred. So that alone is enough to win me over. Not best of the year or anything like that, but I would happily watch more like this, and I would not be upset if other series similar to this do the same thing. I'm always up for a good movie end to a series because I'm just more of a movie guy in general. So yeah, check it out. If you haven't seen the show, I would absolutely watch it for sure. Give it some time to really get into it and let it wash over you, so to speak. If you just are desperate for some medieval, historical, epic warfare content, you could do a lot worse than this. It's really not that hard to get into if you have no knowledge of it, in my opinion. Maybe I'm too close to the material to say that for sure, but I think you could. And it's on Netflix, so you're not having to rent it or anything like that if you have the Netflix subscription. So yeah, that is a 3.5 out of 5. All right, well, let's get to our retro review, which is The Northman, and we do have a clip as well, so take a listen.
Fjellner's touch will not linger on me when I leave this island.
You marked him well. Now I've found the cold iron that will strike him down.
When will you do it?
When I must. For now I will haunt this farm like a hungry corpse returned from the grave. Fjellner thinks Amlet is long dead.
Yes, but what of your mother?
She will revel in Fjellner's anguish. She only feigns her love to protect their child.
Won't she wish?
When I free her, I will bring the boy if I must.
They've moved me back into the kitchen. If we can keep
Our plan will have to wait. Go.
All right, let's get to The Northman, which, as I said, it came out in 2022, directed by Robert Eggers, stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Klaus Bang, Ethan Hawke, Anya Taylor-Joy, Gustav Lynn, Elliot Rose, Willem Dafoe, a few others. And the synopsis is, a young Viking prince is on a quest to avenge his father's murder. Pretty short and sweet. This one made $70 million against a budget of around $70 to $90 million. So when I read that, I was pretty surprised that a movie like this had such a big budget, because you don't really get many historical epic Viking films made for almost $100 million these days. That's pretty rare. But it is sad that the movie did not do that well. It's not that surprising. Maybe that's obvious. Of course, that's a big reason why these movies don't get made very often. I'm still glad that they do. Even though I don't absolutely love this movie, I'm still really glad that it exists in the way that it does, and it got the budget, because that's nice to see. Robert Eggers, we have talked about a little bit on the show. As I said, we did do his first 2 films. When I saw The Witch, I was not a huge fan of it. It's grown on me a little bit over the years. It would still be my least favorite of the 3 so far. But even watching it for the first time, not loving it, I was thinking, this guy is different. He's original. This is refreshing. This is a bold, singular vision. And I understand why a lot of people do not like it at all, because it is very cryptic and challenging and weird and very mysterious. But on 3-4 rewatches, I've really come around to enjoying it. And The Lighthouse would be my favorite so far of the 3, with The Northman being a close second. I've seen the movie twice now. I did not get to see it in theaters, unfortunately. But I was very, very excited to see this because, once again, historical epics are absolutely my cup of tea. I'm there for every single one whenever possible. And Robert Eggers alone was enough to draw me in. The movie is pretty solid. It's not as great as I think it could be. It's big and dark and epic and mysterious and mystical and all those things that Robert Eggers really incorporates in all of his films. But there is a certain shallowness at times that I don't know if that was lost in translation, lost through research, or the script. It is co-written by a poet, and at times the dialogue is a little too poetic, overdone, to where it feels like you're not really hearing real people talk. I understand that it's still mythical in some ways, but at the same time, you're still spending a lot of quiet moments with these characters where they're just talking normally, but they're speaking so in such an elevated way that doesn't always feel real, where they don't always feel truly grounded or like you relate to them. But that isn't a huge deal. I'm kind of used to that with these movies and just with Robert Eggers alone. Alexander Skarsgård, I like in general. He's grown on me a lot. I didn't love him when he started out, but he's grown as an actor, in my opinion, and this is definitely one of his best. Even his physicality alone is pretty insane. He's just this looming, massive figure in this film and pretty daunting and terrifying. Anya Taylor-Joy, I love in everything. I can't wait to see her in Furiosa. Even in the time that she's been in Hollywood, she's done so much variety. The score is amazing. It looks amazing. It is muddy and dark and gritty, but there is a beauty to it, a dark beauty. And the landscapes, the sets, all that is really, really high level, top tier stuff. You can see that research that they did of that time period. The movie does really try and get into toxic masculinity, the emptiness of revenge, I guess you could say. And that latter idea really works for me. The ending, some people complain that it's not satisfying. I don't really feel that way. I found it to be satisfying visually, even. It's fantastic. Just that volcano hellscape that they're having that battle in is pretty awesome. And I haven't really seen much else like it. And what I do like, maybe some people feel the opposite, I don't know, but that idea of the emptiness of revenge, if maybe I'm speaking way out of turn or I'm reading too much into it, I don't know, sorry, but what I really liked is by the end of the movie where, spoiler, it's a couple years old, where he dies, I was just thinking to myself, what a waste of a life. And maybe that makes me sound like a jerk, I don't know. He basically, when he was a kid, he saw his father killed by this, rival group, faction, tribe, whatever. And then the entire movie, or in other words, his entire life, his quest is to avenge his father, killing all the people involved, this, that, and the other, all dealing with revenge and the quest for revenge and justice and all that stuff. I mean, more so for revenge. I don't know if just is the right word, but I found myself just contemplating like that was such a depressing waste of a life. Like, why did you, of all the ways to, and at least how I feel is, if someone dies or if someone, I can understand you wanting to have revenge if someone dies that you love in that way, but nevertheless, it's your own life. Would your parent, that loved one, really want you to spend your entire life just trying to avenge them? I know that's part of the Viking idea, Viking on Viking revenge, and almost like a Viking on Viking murder mystery or thriller in a way, if that's what you want to call it. So I appreciate that idea in the context of the world. That makes sense. Thinking about it in a more modern perspective, where people still try and seek revenge on others and just violence with violence and solve nothing. I was just thinking he didn't do anything other than just try to avenge his father, and then he died. And that was it. And he had a chance to leave with his beloved. And then he says, nope, I have to go do this, and leaves her. So if that commentary wasn't in the movie already, it would have been a failure at the end for me. However, maybe I'm in the minority, but I like how the movie ends because it is so depressing and pessimistic where, dang, he didn't do anything else but that. So that idea is something I haven't ever really seen done before in that way. And Robert Eggers is great with commentary and keeping grounded real ideas in films that typically are very mystical and out there and weird and bizarre. Nevertheless, there are points in the movie that feel those ideas are gone for a little while, and it focuses more on just brutal, vengeful violence, which is okay. I liked Seven Kings Must Die for the same reason, and so I don't dislike that inherently. And the movie still is very memorable, and just that emotional resonance of the atmosphere and all that definitely hits me and sticks with me. But for the runtime, for the pacing, for the cryptic nature of the film, it does feel a little frustrating at times because of those ideas kind of going off in the wind every so often. But again, production value is off the charts, looks amazing. The sequence with the blind priestess lady is awesome, and that costume design is great. The village raid is probably the best part in the movie, where they just storm this village and just, it's all out violence and brutality. So that sequence is really, really well done. And those long takes that they do is great. The sequence on the boat with Anya Taylor-Joy and Alexander Skarsgård before he leaves. Some people don't like that sequence. They kind of take some out of it. I like that sequence a lot because it shows you the choice he has, and he ends up making the wrong one, in my opinion. That sequence is great. The opening part of the movie where Ethan Hawke is trying to teach Alexander Skarsgård, or the young version, the ways of the world, in a sense, and they have that demonic cave ritual thing, is pretty great. So there's a lot of really standout, unique, visceral sequences in the film. They don't always add up to something substantial as opposed to The Lighthouse, which is a little bit tighter, and that vision is a little bit more confident. Nicole Kidman is amazing. I mean, really all of the performances across the board are excellent. The sequence where they are playing that Viking version of rugby, field hockey, whatever it is crazy to watch, where people end up actually getting maimed. That's something I've never really seen before. The Berserker ritual night sequence is great. Alexander Skarsgård's weird, twisted relationship with Nicole Kidman's character, which is his mom, is very interesting. So there's a lot to really enjoy there. It's not a movie for everybody. More people should watch it just because of the amazing production value across the board, the visceral nature of the story. It's really one that you don't see very often, as I said, and I wish we would get more of, in terms of the top-notch director who has a bold vision for the movie. Even if it doesn't work totally, I'd happily take a flawed version of this film over it not being made at all. And you can tell the amount of passion and commitment and intensity that the actors brought, and really everyone brought, to making this movie happen. And sadly, it's not an absolute masterpiece to me right now. Maybe it will be at some other point. I know some people liked it even more than I did, but I still think it's a very solid movie, a little underrated, maybe a little misunderstood. And I do feel like there are some interesting ideas there that make the movie more impactful and complex and resonating than some may give it credit for. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, or giving it too much benefit of the doubt because of my fondness for this style of film. Would be my second favorite Robert Eggers film. I'm dying to see his Nosferatu adaptation coming fairly soon. So yeah, definitely check it out. Just, you got to be in the right mood for it, for sure. So that is a heavy 4 out of 5. All right, I'll end off with other stuff I watched. Picks of the week. So first off, new release, I watched Thanksgiving, the new Eli Roth slasher film, which could be the start of a new franchise for him. I don't know. I think there is a second one in the works, but we'll see. This one takes place obviously at Thanksgiving, and there's this flashback to a Black Friday, or actually it's Thanksgiving night, where they decide to open this store, and there's this huge, crazy customer invasion, basically, to get all the best deals and to get out with the products, and then people end up getting killed and maimed and all these other things. And so there's this dark mark on the store and on the people who owned it, and on Plymouth, which is where the story is set. Then in the following years, a mysterious serial killer ends up popping up and kills all the people involved with the store itself, like some of the customers, security guards who just didn't do anything, or who happily walked over people who were getting injured or killed. So basically taking revenge on all the wrongdoers. It's just a very similar kind of thing to Halloween or Scream, anything like that, where there's a lot of suspicion. You don't know who it is. Could be anyone. Eli Roth, I like him to a certain extent. He is an auteur, for better and for worse. I do want to do a bonus show of his films, covering all of them up to this point, soon for Bandcamp. So keep an eye out for that. I've seen all of his movies at this point. The Grey Inferno is probably my favorite. I'm dying to see his Borderlands adaptation coming this year, I believe. I liked the movie more than I thought I would. I hadn't heard much at all if people really liked it or if people didn't like it. I just was curious because I really like B-movie slashers like this. I'm a big Halloween, Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I love all those franchises. So one that doesn't necessarily serve as a reboot for those, I'm definitely there for. As a fairly original slasher, it's really not that bad. I thought it was Eli Roth's most confidently directed in terms of balancing tone and comedy, horror, because it does go very over the top. The deaths are very ridiculous and silly, but there's also some actual visceral, gross gore there. But then there's also good, genuine comedy. So it does strike a good balance that not a lot of modern slashers and reboots really capture. And Eli Roth, clearly being a big fan of this style of film, did that very well. And so I really liked it. For that reason, it was consistently entertaining, maybe a little long. It wasn't that long of a movie runtime wise, but maybe a little long still. The ending reveal, it works, I guess. It wasn't really a big shock. But also one big thing that Eli Roth doesn't do that well to me is his direction style is not very graceful or elegant. Biggest misfire in the movie, not that it's a really big issue, but one thing that left me slightly sour is the final moment of the movie where the girl wakes up and then you see the guy in the closet on fire, which is a dream sequence, not to really spoil anything here, but you see the guy on fire grabbing her and then it just cuts to the credits and this rock song. And I'm thinking that just feels almost as if the movie should keep going, not setting it up for a sequel, because the direction itself feels not climactic. It's this weird teaser at the end that doesn't really need to be there. And if it needs to be there, it should have been done a little bit more elegantly, because it felt random. Like the guy I was watching it with was like, wait, what? Okay. It just doesn't end in the way that it seemed like it would, and not necessarily for the better. So his direction is a little clunky, sometimes a little bland. The movie looks okay. The gore, the use of practical effects, and just his horror mindset definitely is unique and refreshing and shocking and graphic at times, but usually it's done with humor. At least it is in this, maybe not so more in his other films. But as far as slashers go, modern slashers, pretty decent. Not a best of the year. Probably second favorite Eli Roth movie so far. Good performances. I like the Plymouth town setting. Patrick Dempsey was very good. Worth checking out if you like that kind of thing. If you're a little squeamish, it doesn't go too crazy with the gore. And when there is pretty graphic gore, it's not really dark and visceral. It's more comedic. So I think more people could enjoy it than maybe they think. There's definitely a lot worse ones out there these days that this one doesn't really go up to. Not in a bad way. I think it strikes a good tone and balance with all of that stuff. Then I rewatched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the David Fincher film, which is one of my all-time favorite films, probably top 2, top 3 films ever. I love the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, as anyone who listens to the show frequently knows. I love the Elizabeth Salander character, and I was with someone who hadn't seen it, and I showed him, and he really enjoyed it. So it's one that I have seen many, many, many times, probably too many times, but I love the whole franchise, the Swedish trilogy, and I will be doing a Girl with the Dragon Tattoo franchise bonus show at some point soon, hoping to do that in the next couple of weeks maybe, so keep an eye out for that on Bandcamp too. It is quite disturbing for anyone who doesn't know. There are rape sequences in there. There is a rape revenge where the lead character gets the rapist back, which is satisfying, but there is still some pretty disturbing rape sequences, so just be advised of that. It is an important part to the character in terms of her backstory and all that, but just be aware of that. It is quite hard to watch. Other than that, Rooney Mara is amazing. Daniel Craig, really the whole production is incredible, and I just wish we could see the second and third books made with David Fincher and that same cast and crew, because that would be amazing. I don't think we're ever going to get that now, but this movie itself, pretty awesome and amazing. I never really tire of it. Definitely a must watch for any mystery thriller fan. Just be ready for it. Then I also watched for the first time Cate Blanchett's Tar, which maybe this speaks to the movie itself. I went in thinking that this was about a real person. And for about 20 or 30 minutes, I was thinking, wow, like I wonder, could I look up this person's music on Spotify? Like I'd be kind of curious about reading a biography of this person. And I looked up and no, it's actually is it inspired by someone? Probably yes. But I was so convinced by the depth of storytelling, the script, the richness of the classical music world. I was thinking this was an actual orchestra conductor and composer. And for anyone who doesn't know the movie, it follows this conductor, very egotistical, very accomplished, but also a little toxic. It follows her somewhat rise and fall in trying to come up with this or rehearse for this concert. It is more so a portrayal of mental decline in some ways, and also it's a interesting take on cancel culture where there's accusations of grooming with these young musicians by her, and then other elements. But I thought the script itself was one of the most well-written scripts in terms of the knowledge of classical music and the past conductors and composers, the concepts, really everything you can name with classical music. I felt like this person knows this backwards and front. And in terms of the research, that was evidently clear in every scene. And Cate Blanchett, she can do anything. She has basically played everything at this point. She's amazing in it. It's one of the best character pieces that I've seen in a long, long time. It is quite long. It's just over 2.5 hours. So you really got to be ready to sit with it. But it was so satisfying, very compelling all the way through. Lots of interesting ideas, great music. And Cate Blanchett just owns it in every scene. She can go from being this bright, egotistical musician to having this complete mental breakdown and just getting into the dumps. And she can do it all. Absolutely worth watching. I believe it's on Amazon Prime now to stream. If I had seen it in 2022 when it came out, I absolutely would have had it on my top 10 list, maybe top 5 even, because I just was one of the best movies I've seen in a long, long time. As I said on my Letterboxd review, I would go as far as say it's a masterpiece. And I'm really looking forward to see what else that director does in the future. Then lastly, I rewatched the documentary 7852, which is the making of the Psycho shower scene in the original film. And I saw this one back at the Sundance Film Festival when it came out, I believe 2017, 2016, something like that. And it premiered there. I love Psycho. It's one of my all-time favorite films. I love Alfred Hitchcock, and I love any behind-the-scenes making of documentaries. The movie, rewatching it, I think I liked it a little bit more the first time. Rewatching it, I watched it with someone who had just watched Psycho for the first time, hadn't really seen a lot of movies like this before, and I hadn't watched it since it came out at the festival. It's entertaining, and I like the weird group of people that they have. Professors, and they have Elijah Wood is in there weirdly. Eli Roth is in there. A lot of different directors and actors and professors. For a documentary, a feature-length film, it does get a little too obnoxiously in-depth to where they're saying, oh, and the painting Alfred Hitchcock put on the wall in the motel meant this, and it was a historical significance for these people in the painting thinking this. And if I was watching it by myself, I might not be as aware of those things, of it being too academic, but it did get to points where I was a little eye roll. It could have been a little bit more restrained, maybe expanded more on the overarching impact of Psycho, as opposed to saying, oh, and the color of the rug in this sequence meant this, and the painting meant that. It's just stuff that I know some people die for to hear all that stuff. I'm not saying that I don't want to hear the inner workings of how directors think and what they want to incorporate and choose not to. But for what it was and how it was presented, it was just too much sometimes to where I just wanted to skip forward a little bit. And yeah, not as good as I remember. Still entertaining and still informative. And there are some parts that are awesome. I don't love all the recreations. That stuff is a little but you do see the incredible change of filmmaking and Hollywood in general when Psycho came out from when before it came out, and that difference in style and violence, and then them looking at the 60s in general in terms of when Psycho came out, all of this happened. Not to say that the two are connected, but Psycho is almost a unintentional start to all of this craziness and violence in the 60s. So those ideas, whether they're connected or not, that's up to you. But I did still find certain parts of the movie interesting, and I'll happily watch any making of documentary like this, even if I don't always love everything. Worth checking out if you like Psycho, or if you want something in that niche subgenre, just not as grounded and restrained as I think it could be. It's a little too much. Still entertaining and still worth checking out if that's your kind of thing. So, all right, well, that is about it for the show. Once again, so sorry about the flip-flopping of when Elle is going to come back. She will be back next week for the best of 2023, so keep an eye out for that. Follow us on social media at FilmBuds. me and Elle on Letterboxd. You can email us at TheFilmBudsPodcast@gmail.com, and all of that stuff is in the show notes. Check out our bonus show page at filmbuds.bandcamp.com. We really appreciate all of our new listeners and all the people who have been sticking around for the long term. Love having you here. We hope you'll stick around. Please subscribe and rate if you have not yet. Thank you to all those who have recently. We've gotten a big jump, as I said. It means a lot. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it even half as much as I did. And see you next time.